Hi everyone, my name is Shazia Khan and the unit we'll be doing today is curriculum design. The unit has 3 learning outcomes and an assignment discussion session, which we'll be going through towards the end when we've done the learning outcomes. Before we carry on with learning outcome 1, I just want to go through the unit specification and the assignment brief quite briefly, so you've got an idea of what we're doing in the session, and also the assignment brief and the specification is available on Moodle for you. So I'll just share the unit specification with you. So the unit specification, it's curriculum design is the unit, and it is unit reference number is H6184989. It's a unit level 6, and it's the unit grading is a pass or a fail. So the unit aim is to develop your understanding of how to plan, design curriculums to support education and training. And this will include different approaches to curriculum design and development. So we'll be going through that in each learning outcome. So just briefly, learning outcome 1. Here which we'll be doing today, is to understand approaches to curriculum design and development. We'll be looking at 1.1, which is to analyse the purpose of curriculum design and development. AC assessment criteria 1.2, which is to evaluate approaches and models of curriculum design and development design used. 1.3, to explain the importance of learner feedback when developing curriculum. 1.4, to analyse how to manage risks when developing curriculum. And 1.5, to evaluate methodologies used to monitor and evaluate any sort of curriculum. The indicative context for learning outcome 1 is social, political, economic context of education and training. We'll be looking at contemporary issues with policies in education and training, professionalism, dual professionalism, and professional values. We'll also look at organisational policies, quality assurance and improvement arrangements, ideologies, theory, models, and instances of curriculum development, design, and evaluation, inclusive curriculum development and design, the impact of social, political, and economic contexts on curriculum development and design. Learning outcome 2, which is to be able to develop a curriculum, we'll be looking at assessment criteria 2.1, which is to identify learning objectives and outcomes required for curriculum design. 2.2, to develop a curriculum for an education and training programme. 2.3, to plan assessment approaches to meet the learning outcomes of curriculum following the necessary guidelines. 2.4, to produce resources to support the curriculum. And the indicative content for learning outcome 2 is looking at evolution and development of inclusive learning, technologies to enable inclusive learning, theories and models of communication. We'll also look at the application of theories and learning meeting regulatory, legal and awarding organisation requirements, theories and models of behaviour management as this relates to individuals and groups, theories of learning and their applications, application of learning theories to teaching and learning, and application of theories and models of communication to education and training. And finally, learning outcome 3, which we'll be looking at being able to review a curriculum. And the assessment criteria for that is looking at evaluating the achievement of the learning outcomes of an education and training curriculum. 3.2, to evaluate the delivery of an education and training curriculum. 3.3, to identify areas for improvement for the education and training curriculum. 3.4, to make improvements to education, training and curriculum. In the indicative content, we'll be looking at facilitating feedback, observation, monitoring of outcomes, evaluation, inclusion of feedback into review cycle, identification of future goals and objectives, and looking at strategies for reviewing curriculum and people involved in curriculum review. And the assessment for this unit is a pass. To achieve a pass, you must complete all the learning outcomes demonstrated. And the word count for the assessment, which is the assignment, is 4,000 words. And these are some of the indicative reading lists that we've got listed here. But this would be listed on each learning outcome, which references we've used for this session. No, all my class. So we'll be looking at the learning outcome 1 now to identify which areas we're going through now, okay? So I just want to, before I want to go on to learning outcome 1 slides, I'll go through the assignment brief with you, which is available on Moodle for you. So all these resources will be available on Moodle. I'll just share that with you. So this is the assignment brief, and this is available on Moodle for you. We will have an assignment discussion towards the end, so you'd have a better idea of what you need to do in each task. So the unit aims, what I've just gone through, all the aims of the unit, the learning outcomes 1, 2, and 3, and then you have a scenario which you will base your task around. So it's a scenario where you'd have to produce a portfolio, and the 3 tasks there for you, which we'll go through more towards the end. And it identifies in each task what you need to do, what report format, and how many words you have to do for each task. So the first task, 1 of 3, you have to do 2,000 words for that. Task 2, you'd have to do a requirement of 2,000 words for. Task 2 would be task 3, 2 of 1 is a curriculum design. Task 3 is where you'd have to do 2,000 words for the first part and the second part. So it's 1,000 words each. Goes through your referencing and your evidence as well in regards to that. This is available on Moodle for you, and also will be available when we do the assignment discussion for you, okay? So I'll just go back to the slide. So stop sharing that, and then I'll go to the slides so we can start doing the session. So the first learning outcome that we're doing, which I've identified, is to understand approaches to curriculum design and development. The unit aim is to develop learners' understanding of how to plan and design curriculums to support education and training. This will include the exploration of different approaches to curriculum design and development. Learning outcome 1, indicative content. So as I mentioned earlier, social, political, economic context of education and training, contemporary issues and policies in education and training, professionalism, dual professionalism and professional values, organizational policies, quality assurance, improvement arrangements, ideologies, theories, models and instances of curriculum development, design and evaluation, inclusive curriculum development and design and impact of social, political and economic context on curriculum development and design. So that's what we'll be looking at in regards to learning outcome 1. Key terminologies to identify. So what are the approaches to curriculum design and development? There are 3 models of curriculum design: subject-centered, learner-centered and problem-centered design. And this is an article that you could read in regards to curriculum and learning design across UK within like HE environment and HE education. So that you could read in your own time, and it's a document that would help you look at different approaches to curriculum and learning design. So 1.1, analyze the purpose of curriculum design and development. So curriculum design is the process of creating a curriculum that aligns with goals, objectives, and learning outcomes of a course. It may involve creating an entirely new curriculum or making changes to an existing one so it meets the needs of the learners and the students. So it's all about resources, all about investing time and resources into the process. So we look at things like a first one on there, aligning with educational goals. So making sure that we are ensuring that align with the education institution and achieving learning outcomes and educational objectives. Relevance and currency. So the purpose is to create a curriculum design that is relevant and is for identifying new knowledge, emerging trends and updated teaching methods to keep up to date with everything. Meeting diverse needs, so it needs to take into account the diversity and backgrounds of the learners. It needs to cater for the learners, and it's creating a plan that's going to teach and develop learners from diverse areas and identify their knowledge and skills. Supporting effective learning, so a well curriculum provides a road map for teachers, so it identifies that teachers are being able to follow structure, meet the needs of the learners, and have different approaches to teaching as well, and making sure that identifying the objectives of that. Promoting critical thinking and problem solving, so curriculum design can focus on fostering critical thinking, problem solving, encourages students to think critically and apply to real life situations. And it looks at how students, it should always be designed with the student in mind. So you should be designing your curriculum around what your expectations are of that student and meeting their needs and making sure they are fostering any sort of skills they have. Also assessment and evaluation. So the curriculum serves as a basis for assessment and evaluation of student progress. So it defines the criteria for measuring, so what learning outcomes they need, what helps them with the teaching strategies, how are they going to adapt to this, completing this criteria for measuring that learning outcome. Accountability. Curriculum development is essential for establishing accountability. So it provides this framework whether the goals have been met, and allows for any sort of readjustments of anything. So make it flexible, which is the next one, flexibility and adaptability, and is designed in mind of students' needs and wants, and making sure that it's adaptable for them. And also they need to make sure that it's adaptable for the challenges and the changes in life as well. Cultural and social norms as well. So curriculum design considers the cultural and context of education, ensuring that content is culturally sensitive and relevant to the local community and global context. Lifelong learning, so instill a love for lifelong learning, so to prepare students for the next stage, for the future, so that they are continuously learning throughout their lives and throughout the future plans as well. So in conclusion to 1.1, we're looking at curriculum design and development serve the critical purpose of providing structure, relevance and effectiveness to education. It's dynamic process that responds to ever-changing needs of society. There's a need to have curriculum design in place. It's not, people are more organized, and it involves identifying learning objectives and activities that will help the students reach those objectives. And it could be arranged in different ways, but always should be designed with the student in mind. A good curriculum design will highlight how students are assessed and what standards are to meet. It provides this kind of framework for the content to be delivered to the students, and how that content is evaluated. So now we're going to move on to 1.2, which is looking at evaluate approaches, models of curriculum design and development used. So what we said, curriculum design is really important in identifying a plan for education professionals to use in class. So like we mentioned, there are different types of curriculum design, which we mentioned earlier in the indicative content. We've got student-centered, learner-centered, and problem-centered. So student-centered is more where teachers use student-centered curriculum design when creating a curriculum about a specific material or educational topic. Learner-centered is student-centered design that involves creating a curriculum according to the needs of the student. And then we've got the problem-centered design, and this is another form of student-centered design that focuses on specific student-specific educational challenges. So, these are really important when it comes to curriculum design. 1.2, evaluate approaches and models of curriculum design and development used. So curriculum design refers, like we said, to the structure of the organization of the curriculum, and curriculum development includes the planning, implementation and evaluation processes of curriculum. Curriculum models guide these processes. So, there are processes in place that need to be implemented, and there are some approaches and models that are used. Firstly, there's the Tyler's linear model, and that was developed at the University of Chicago. It was the first model of curriculum development, and it was presented in the book Principles of Curriculum and Instruction, published in 1949. And Tyler argued that curriculum development should be logical and systematic. He also argued that to develop any curriculum workers should respond to 4 basic questions. So there were 4 questions that identified people that they needed to respond to. Firstly, what educational purposes should the school seek to attain? Secondly, what educational experience is likely to attain these objectives? Thirdly, how can these educational experiences be organised? And fourthly, how can we determine whether these purposes are being attained? Aside from these 4 questions, Tyler also identified 3 curriculum sources: society, students, and subject matter. Accordingly, curriculum workers need to study these sources carefully in order to develop a curriculum. He also pointed out that the importance of philosophy of education and psychology of learning to screen the objectives that are included in the curriculum. So when we look at the strengths of his model, this model is highly structured and straightforward. It focuses on clear objectives, content, and assessing outcomes, making it easy to measure. So they offer kind of a logical order for curriculum's components. Weaknesses, it may be oversimplify the complexity of education by not accounting for multi-dimensional nature of learning. It can be rigid and less adaptable to diverse learning needs and contexts. And it's flawed because curriculum creation is really a rigid and linear process, like we mentioned. So, and also it ignores the fact that not all educational results can be measured, the Tyler's model, and it disregards how the environment is evolving, and it disregards the fact that future cannot be precisely anticipated. The next model is the teacher as designer, the TABA model. TABA it was a curriculum, the follower of Tyler was another curriculum scholar called Hilda Taba. Taba presented her model in a book called Curriculum Development, Theory and Practice in 1962. Her model is a modified version of Tyler's model. Taba argued that curriculum development should follow a sequential and logical process, and she suggested more information input in all phases of curriculum development. Taba also claimed that all curricula are composed of fundamental elements, and Taba outlined 7 steps that should be followed when developing a good curriculum. Firstly, diagnosis of needs. Secondly, formulation of objectives. Thirdly, selection of content. Fourthly, organization of content. Fifthly, selection of learning experience. 6, organization of learning experience. And 7, determination of what to evaluate and ways and means of doing it. Taba also suggests that curriculum development could be made successful if there was a diagnosis of needs. And her strengths were that this model introduces, it was called a spiral curriculum, that's the Taba one, the weaknesses, that it emphasized the role of teachers in designing the curricula, allowing customization and flexibility based on expertise and understanding of students. Weaknesses that it might lead to consistency and across the different teachers' curricula, and may lack a systematic approach to achieving specific learning goals. The spiral curriculum model introduces topics in a cyclic manner, revisiting and building upon them over time, and it supports learning and long-term retention of knowledge. Weaknesses, its implementation can be challenging as it requires careful planning to ensure that students truly grasp the foundational concepts. The next one we're looking at is the constructivist model. And here is a theory that people construct their own knowledge and experience through social interaction rather than passively taking in information. It's perspective that's influential in education and social research, and is based on the idea that prior knowledge forms the foundation of new learning. And the constructive theory refers to the method of learning that allows learners to construct their knowledge and skills through meaningful interaction and empowers them to through their own self-directed learning. And the strengths of that one is it places a strong emphasis on active student involvement in the learning process, promoting critical thinking and problem-solving skills. The weakness is its constructivist approach can be less structured, making it challenging to ensure the learning outcomes are met. The social cultural theories, this approach is important because it highlights the importance of social interaction and cultural context in learning, encourages integration of real-world experiences into the curricula, and also weaknesses, it's implementing a social cultural approach can be complex and may require additional resources to support collaborative learning. Backward design, Wiggins and McTighe. Backward design could also be referred as purpose-driven teaching. It asks you to first identify what learning outcomes you want your students to achieve before considering what methods and tasks students will engage. By focusing first on the outcome, backward design helps you to plan your courses and tasks with a great degree of purpose and intentionally. The effect of planning a course backward is strengthened alignment between student learning and student work, as well as more transparent instruction. Backward design has three stages: identifying outcomes, determining the acceptable evidence to support these outcomes, and planning corresponding instruction tasks and experiences. Then we've got problem-based learning, PBL, and that is element of the issue around, problem-based learning, which encourages students to explore real life problems, fostering critical thinking and teamwork. Its weaknesses are that it may require more extensive facilitation and guidance from teachers, and the assessment process can be challenging. It's a teaching method in which students learn about subject through the experience of solving an open-ended problem found in the trigger material. It's a student-centered approach, and it's where students learn about a subject by working in groups and have open-ended problems. This problem is what drives the motivation and the learning of that. The next one is competency-based education, which is CBE. So this is an approach that allows students to advance based on their ability to master a skill or competency at their own pace, regardless of the environment. So here they will be working at their own pace and making sure that they are able to work at that pace, and this is tailored to different needs of different learners, and it can be more efficient and student outcomes in this. So it operates a dynamic learner-focused approach, unlike conventional learning models which rely on things like heavily on time-bound courses and standardized testing. The CBE underscores mastery of specific skills or knowledge and competencies. So it does help in regards to elements of that. Then the strengths for that is CBE focuses on students demonstrating specific competencies, ensuring they are well prepared for real life world challenges. And then the weakness is implementing CBE competency-based education can be resource intensive, and consent and measurement of competencies can be complex. Then we've got the holistic and multidisciplinary curriculum. This approach is designed to promote an understanding of how different fields are interconnected and can be utilized together to solve complex issues. By utilizing multiple perspectives from different disciplines, students can deepen their understanding of the subject area or the subject matter. The strengths of this is these models recognize the interconnectedness of knowledge and promote interdisciplinary learning, making education more meaningful. The weakness is that it can be challenging to integrate diverse subjects effectively and ensure a well-rounded education. So in conclusion to 1.2, where we've looked at the different approaches and theories, when evaluating these approaches and models, it's essential to consider the specific goals, learners, resources, and context in the educational institution. The choice of a curriculum design model should align with educational objectives and the needs of students, taking into account the strengths and weaknesses of each approach. Often a blend of approaches or customized model may be the most effective solution. So they may be able to, use each approach, together to kind of minimize and customize their curriculum design, because, it needs to take into account educational needs, but also students' needs and their, what we're looking in regards to their needs and factors to take into consideration. 1.3, explain the importance of learner feedback when developing curriculum. Effective feedback assists the learner to reflect on their learning and their learning strategies so that they can make adjustments to make better progress in their learning. Learning feedback is important for curriculum development because it provides teachers with evidence of students' progress and achievement, and this helps teachers make decisions about how to plan the learning program and how they can improve students' learning strategies. So implementing new strategies for learners, making sure that they understand why it's so important and why these strategies are implemented. So we are trying to meet the needs of the students and implement their needs as well, rather than just looking at a curriculum design in place. So firstly, tailoring individual needs. Learner feedback provides insight into specific needs, interests, and learners' styles of students. Here, feedback is a key element of the process of ongoing assessment. So making sure that you're providing feedback to the learner. You focus on the quality of the learner's work as well. Assessment and monitoring, progress monitoring feedback helps educators across the effectiveness of the curriculum in real time by understanding what aspects of curriculum are working and what improvements need to be. So from feedback, you can identify if there are any changes need to be made, that we need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the learners. So feedback is there to monitor any sort of elements of that. Enhancing engagement. So when students feel their opinions and needs are valued, they're more likely to be engaged in the learning process. Involving learners in the curriculum development process can boost the motivation and enthusiasm. So making sure they are part of it, making sure they are giving feedback and making sure that, you are taking on board what their feedback is something really important and makes the student feel like they are being heard. Alignment with learning outcomes. You need to make sure that you are aligning with the learning outcomes in place. You are making sure that you are meeting the curriculum needs and making sure that you are aligning with what is needed in the curriculum. So you are taking on board what the learners are saying, you are listening to them and taking on board any sorts of learning outcomes that you need to align with. Continuous improvement. So curriculum development is an ongoing process. Learner feedback provides an essential mechanism for continuous improvement. Every time you get feedback from learners, it makes you, improve any strategies, and it encourages you to make any changes if need be. So, continuous improvement and feedback is needed from learners. Addressing learning challenges. So feedback allows educators to identify any areas where learners are struggling or facing challenges. And this may lead to the development of additional support mechanisms or resources. You need to take on board what the learner is saying, what their feedback is saying, and reflecting on that feedback, making sure that, learners' feedback is taken on board. It's inclusivity and diversity. So learner feedback can highlight the need for more inclusive and culturally responsive curriculum design. It helps that the curriculum respects and accommodates diverse backgrounds and perspectives. Evaluating teaching methods, and that's really important, because if you get feedback from learners about different teaching methods, this will enhance your learning and your teaching methods become more effective. So, if a learner wants you to do more, gives you feedback that they need more digitalization or more focus on certain areas, you need to take that on board when doing a curriculum design. Promoting autonomy and responsibility. So like we said, involving learners in the curriculum design process can foster this element of ownership, make sure that they are encouraging them to be an active role in their own learning process. Meeting 21st century skills, so learner feedback can guide the integration of 21st century skills such as critical thinking, analytical thinking, problem solving, and it makes sure that the learners are prepared for the future world and the modern world out there. So in conclusion to 1.3, in summary, learner feedback is a valuable source of information that allows curriculum development. Feedback, is given from the learners to make sure that they are being heard. But effective feedback is so important in any sort of element of curriculum design, and it's a key element of the process of ongoing learning and assessment. Effective feedback assists the learner to reflect their own learning and any sort of strategies when putting together curriculum design. And it promotes a student-centered approach to curriculum development, which ultimately leads to better educational outcomes. 1.4, analyze how to manage risks when developing curriculum. So managing risks, risk management is important because it keeps the students, faculty and finances safe from any sort of harm or anything. You need to make sure these curriculum, any sort of risks are identified, and there are some strategies for analysing and managing risks in curriculum design. Firstly, identifying potential risks. So the first step of building a risk culture is to identify and assess the potential risks that may affect your curriculum goals, outcomes and delivery. Here you can use different tools, consider factors like changing educational policies, resources, learner needs, external events. You could use risk tools such as matrix, SWOT analysis, PESTLE, to evaluate the impact of the risk. And you should also consider different sources, like we mentioned, external events, pandemics. Establish a risk management team. So create a dedicated team for risk management. The team should include curriculum developers, educators, stakeholders, parents, community. So it identifies that you've got a team in place that is able to establish this risk management team. Prioritize the risk. Not all risks are equal importance. So make sure the ones that have a high priority, make sure you are prioritizing them risks, and make sure you allocated resources when you prioritize these risks. Make sure the highest is done first and then the lowest below, because it identifies the level of risk, because not every risk is equally. Develop a risk management plan, and it's really important to put a plan together of all your risk management and outlines any sort of strategies in place, outlines any areas for development, also takes into account any sort of mitigating, any sort of monitoring. You need to be able to monitor what risks are in place and identify these risks, and a plan must be put in place to identify any sort of contingencies or anything. Regular monitoring and reviewing. So continuous monitoring and reviewing and assessing how potential risks are evolving. Regular reviews are really important. Making sure that you review all the time. So making sure that you have a plan in place and you are reviewing that plan all the time, continuously monitoring and identifying risks and any sort of strategies, and being ready to adjust the plan. Resource allocation, and this again is really important to ensure that sufficient resources are in place to allocate any sort of risk, like time, budget. Adequate resources can prevent or mitigate any sort of risks. Contingency plans, so making sure there are plans in place to, if there are any issues of high risk, the plans will specify what actions, what alternative approaches, resources reallocation to change the curriculum. Stakeholder communication, make sure that you keep all stakeholders, including teachers, parents and administrators, informed of any sort of potential risks. Quality assurance and evaluation, implement quality assurance through curriculum process to identify that the elements of that there's continuous monitoring. Scenario planning, make sure that you use scenario planning to envisage various future scenarios that may impact on the curriculum and how you can respond to these. So legal and ethical considerations need to be taken into account, making sure that the curriculum complies with them. and failure to do that will damage the educational institution. Adaptability and flexibility, make sure that you're adaptable and flexible, and make sure that your flexible curriculum can be changed and any adjustments need to be made. Professional development, so provide training and any sort of professional development for educators to prepare any sort of potential risks. It's really important to have a risk assessment in place and a plan in place so you can identify and define any risks, assess any likelihood, evaluate the impact, risk ranking or mitigation, communication really important, and regular updates on risks as well, and monitoring and reviewing this. So it's really important in regards to that. Make sure plans are in place, make sure you have contingencies in place that can make any changes to the curriculum if need be. Data analysis, so collect any, analyze any data relating to the curriculum and implement any sort of identify any emerging risks and areas that need improvement. So in conclusion to 1.4, by proactively identifying and assessing and managing risk, curriculum development education institution can minimize disruptions. It can be important to ensure the quality of education, enhance the overall effectiveness of the curriculum. Risk management should be an integral part of the curriculum development process to make sure that the educational outcomes are successful. So it's really important, risk management, risk assessment, having plans in place, making sure you're reviewing and monitoring them, making sure you've got data, making sure that you're able to change the curriculum quite easily as you please, if there is a need for high risk. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Just a minute. Sorry, I'll just share that again. Sorry about that. It's just there. Share. So in regards to elements of 1.5, sorry about that. Just the slides just went off. So in regards to 1.5, evaluate methodologies used to monitor and evaluate curriculum. So evaluating and monitoring curriculum is crucial for ensuring that it remains relevant, effective, and aligned with educational goals. Various methodologies are employed for those purposes. So some of the methodologies we're going to look at: standardized testing and assessment. So the strengths is that it provides quantitative data that allows for comparisons across schools and region. It offers objective measures of student performance. The weakness is that it may encourage teaching to test and not capture the full scope of learning outcomes, and can create stress and pressure for students and teachers. The next one is formative assessment. And formative assessment is carried out throughout the course or project to aid learning only because learners made it to the end of the unit strengths. Test does not mean they have mastered the skills. So formative assessment is not about assigning grades to learners. Formative assessment helps teachers understand learners' learning while they teach and adjust their teaching strategies accordingly. It helps teachers to track how knowledge is growing and changing in the learners in real life. Some examples of formative assessment are student portfolios, class discussions, regular quizzes, virtual classroom. Strengths of formative assessment is provides ongoing feedback to students and teachers, allowing for immediate adjustment in instruction, and it supports personalized learning and identifies areas for improvement. Some of the weaknesses are that can be time consuming and not be standardized, making it challenging to compare across different classes or schools. Then we've got summative evaluation. Summative evaluation is a type of evaluation that occurs at the end of learning period or program. It assesses students' learning and whether they have met the established learning goals, and it evaluates the effectiveness of learning program or to provide a final grade for a student's performance. And the strengths of summative evaluation is offers a comprehensive overview of what students have learned at the end of a specific period, and it provides accountability and informs decisions about student progression. The weakness is it may not provide timely feedback for instructional adjustments and can be high stakes and may not reflect the full range of students' abilities. Then we have curriculum mapping, which aims to ensure that assessments, tests, and other methods teachers use to evaluate learning achievement and progress are based on what has been actually taught to students and on the learning standards that the students are expected to meet in a particular course, subject area, or grade level. Curriculum mapping is crucial for ensuring that educational programs are thoughtfully designed to meet learning outcomes and competencies required for student success. It provides a structured framework for analysing and organising the curriculum, facilitating a cohesive learning journey. The strengths of that, it allows educators to visually map the curriculum, ensuring alignment with learning objectives and standards, supports identification of gaps and redundancies. The weaknesses for curriculum mapping is it may be time intensive to create and maintain, focuses on curriculum structure but not necessarily on instructional quality. Observations and learning walks and purposeful walkthroughs of classrooms are there to focus on pupil learning and behaviour. And also, unlike a classroom observation, it provides a view of a single classroom. A learning walk creates a wide picture made of small snapshots. And the strengths of that is that it provides a qualitative assessment of classroom practices and how the curriculum is being delivered. It can offer insights into teaching effectiveness. The weakness is it's subject to observer bias, and it may not capture the full extent of curriculum implementation. Student surveys and feedbacks. So these are important, student surveys and feedbacks, because they offer the insight into student perceptions of the curriculum, teaching methods, what they're being taught, the learning styles, and it can identify areas of student engagement and if students are dissatisfied as well. The weakness is students may provide subjective feedback that doesn't necessarily align with educational objectives. So, they may not capture the full thing. They may just write what they want in their feedback. So that's a weakness of it. Teacher self-assessment and reflection. Self-assessment and self-reflection is a powerful way to enhance the student's learning experience. It plays a role in teaching students not to just learn, but also how they learn and what they can do to improve their learning objective or outcomes. By incorporating tasks that require students to critically reflect on their work, processes and learning style that are given the opportunity to identify any sort of gaps. Self-reflection involves reviewing their own work for students and for teachers as well. It encourages, some of the strengths are that encourages educators to reflect on their own teaching, to evaluate what they do, to make sure, there are any areas for improvements, any strengths or weaknesses as well. Weaknesses, self-assessment may not always be objective and teachers may have a limited view of the overall curriculum. So, you need to reflect on your learning processes. Peer review and collaboration. So peer review can be a collaboration process where experts in a field work together to evaluate a research paper and authors engage with their peers to improve their work. And this is the same for teachers as well. There are several types of peer review and collaboration. And the strengths of that, it involves teachers and educators assessing each other's curriculum and instructional methods, promoting professional development and a culture of continuous improvement. The weakness is that can be time consuming and it may require supportive and collaborative school culture to be effective. The next one is longitude studies and research, and this is where researchers repeatedly examine the same individuals to detect any changes that may occur over a period of time. Longitude studies are a type of correlational research in which researchers observe and collect data on a number of variables without trying to influence those variables. The strengths of that involves in-depth research and analysis of curriculum effectiveness over time, providing a holistic view of its impact on student learning. The weakness is it requires significant resources and findings may not be immediately applicable for practical improvements. External review and accreditation. So external review and accreditation is a process where an independent body assesses an organisation to determine if it meets its certain criteria. The process can help organisations improve and it can be public recognition and information to prospective students. So the purpose of accreditation is to encourage organisational development and to ensure that graduates can practice safely and competently, and the process typically involves an independent body selecting external reviewers who then evaluate the organisation's compliance with the standards and requirements, and the review can include a desk-based study of documentation and a visit to the organisation as well. The strength site provides an independent assessment of the curriculum's quality and alignment with educational standards and ensures accountability and quality assurance. And it also tests and benchmark their processes, enhances qualities and any sort of good practices. The weakness is it can be resource intensive and may focus more compliance than instructional effectiveness. In conclusion to 1.5, the choice of methodology depends on the specific objectives and context of curriculum evaluation. Often a combination of these methodologies is used to provide a comprehensive and balanced assessment of curriculum effectiveness. Additionally, regular review and adaptation of evaluation is essential to ensure that it remains aligned with evolving and educational goals and standards. So the element of, making sure that everything is followed and making sure that everything is, in line with it. So just to give you a recap of what we've done in Learning Outcome 1. So we've finished Learning Outcome 1 now. Just a bit of a recap. So we've looked at social, political, economic context of educational leads. We've looked at the element of quality assurance and improvement. We've looked at ideologies and theories such as Tyler and Tabor. We've looked at models and instances of curriculum design, inclusive curriculum development and the impact of social, political and economic context on curriculum development and the importance of that. We've also looked at the element of external review and accreditation, why that's so important for any organisation. And overall, we've looked at the element to support curriculum training and looked at the elements of theories and practices that we've put in place. So that's just a summary of Learning Outcome 1 that we've just done. These are some of the references that are being used for Learning Outcome 1 that you can refer to. So there's 2 pages of that. The plenary refer to ebooks and journals on Moodle for this unit. Make sure you are using Moodle for this, as there's additional reading on there. I've put a link there on further reading. It's a PDF document on approaches to creating curriculum design. And it is looking at the different approaches to creating a curriculum and what elements and what structure they need to go through, taking into account, educational training, educational curriculum design and development. Also, the assignment brief will be available on Moodle for you, and the unit specification is available on Moodle for you. So please use Moodle as your main VIA lead for this. The recording of this session, which is Learning Outcome 1, is also available on Moodle. And there are articles that are available on Moodle as well, additional reading. So we've finished Learning Outcome 1 now. If there's any questions you've got, you need to email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk, and submission of the assignment is to be done on learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. Will be discussed more in the assignment discussion session, and the assignment discussion is 2 weeks after the completion of all the units. And we've finished the session now, and thank you for joining the session today. Thank you. And I will see you in the next session, which is Learning Outcome 2. Thank you.